This happened when I was much younger. I believe I was about 12 years old or so. I remember that one night I found myself home alone. My parents were gone someplace and my older sister went to her friend's house. This didn't happen very often where I would be home by myself, because I remember thinking to myself that it felt strange that the house was so quiet with nobody else there. I was inside of my bedroom doing homework, which I remember I had a lot of it. Was about 8 o'clock or so and dark out when there was a knock at the front door. Immediately, it seemed strange to me. We didn't get too many door-to-door salesmen or anything like that. Still, I got it from my chair, left the room, and walked over to the front door. I remember that I didn't even bother to look out of a window to see who it was or anything. I just opened up the front door to whoever was there. A man stood on the front step and said hi. He was somewhat tall and thin from my memory and had darkish hair. The man asked if my parents were home and I said no. I figured he was some type of salesman or something. After I told him that my parents were not home, though, he did not immediately leave. He kept standing there, and then he asked if he could come inside. I told him no, and the guy didn't say anything right away after that. So I remember that I just closed the door and then locked it. I thought that it was really weird. I then went to the window and looked out. I saw the man walking away back down the driveway. Then I went back to my bedroom to continue with my homework. It didn't take long for me to get really focused, but then just about 10 minutes later I heard another noise. It sounded like somebody was trying to open the back door to the house. I did not get up to go look, though I was too scared. I stayed in my bedroom and listened. The noises didn't last very long though, and soon things became quiet. That's when I decided to get up and go look. I really didn't know what was going on at the time. I was hoping that it was just my imagination or something with a logical explanation. But I think that I also knew that was kind of unlikely. When I left my bedroom and went down the hallway and towards the living room, I then entered the dining room at the back end of the house. It was there that I noticed through a window the same man who had been at the door. He was now standing in the backyard. I quickly turned and ran back to my bedroom. I don't think that the man saw me. When I got back to my room, I got the phone and I called the police. I reported the guy for trying to enter the house, and then I hid in my bedroom. I just remember that I went under my covers and I didn't hear or see anything for what felt like a long time. Eventually the police got there. They actually found the guy hiding in the backyard behind the shed. When they arrived, I really thought that he would have left. I didn't know who the guy was, and my parents and sister didn't either. I'm really glad that he was not able to get inside of the house. My name is Isadora, and this is a story I never thought I'd tell. Some things are best left forgotten, locked away in dark corners of memory, but sometimes those dark corners find you again, no matter how far you try to run. It all started when I bought the house on Willow Street. A new beginning. I told myself fresh paint, big windows, and plenty of space. I had no idea what I was stepping into. The house was old, that much was clear. The kind of place that had lived through more than one lifetime, standing tall through storms, history, and secrets. But it seemed perfect for me at the time. I was looking for something affordable, and when the realtor showed me the place, it felt like it could be home. She didn't say much about its past. She brushed over most of the details. It wasn't until later that I realized just how much she had left out. The first night was calm. I moved in slowly, getting things organized and placing furniture where I thought it would fit. The rooms were quiet, almost too quiet, but I chalked it up to being in a new environment, away from the noise of the city. Still, there was something about the house that felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but the air seemed thick, almost like it was pressing down on me. As the days went by, small things started to happen. It began with noises, faint at first, footsteps on the stairs. When I was upstairs, the sound of a door creaking open, and I knew none were moving. Sometimes I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye, a shadow moving just beyond my field of vision. But every time I turned to look, there was nothing there. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just my imagination. Then one evening, while I was unpacking some boxes in the living room, I found an old photo buried beneath some junk. It was black and white, showing a young girl no older than 10 or 12 standing in front of the very house I had just bought. She was dressed in white, her hair long and dark, a slight smile on her face. Something about the picture made me uneasy. I couldn't stop staring at her eyes. They seemed distant, hollow. The nights grew worse after that. I would wake up in the middle of the night to the feeling of being watched. My skin would prickle and my heart would race. But when I opened my eyes, there was no one there. I told myself it was stressed from the move, that I was just tired, but deep down I knew it was something more. One night, about 2 weeks after moving in, I heard something that I couldn't ignore. It was late, well past midnight, and I was drifting off to sleep when a scream pierced the silence. It wasn't outside, though. It was coming from inside the house, specifically from the basement. The sound was high-pitched, filled with terror, and it sent a jolt of fear straight through me. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, I considered staying put, pretending I hadn't heard anything, but something drew me out of bed, a pull I couldn't explain. Grabbing my phone for a flashlight, I crept down the stairs, my feet barely making a sound on the wooden floor. The house was cold, colder than usual, and with every step I took, the air seemed to grow heavier and thicker. When I reached the basement door, I hesitated. The scream had stopped, but the memory of it still echoed in my ears. Slowly I turned the handle and stepped down into the darkness. The stairs creaked beneath my weight, and as I descended, the chill in the air deepened. My flashlight beam flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. At the bottom of the stairs, I froze. Standing in the far corner of the basement was the girl from the photograph. She was wearing the same white dress, her hair hanging limply around her face. Her eyes were locked on mine, and I could feel the cold seeping into my bones. But it wasn't just her presence that terrified me. It was the way she looked, like she didn't belong in this world anymore. For what felt like hours, we stared at each other, neither of us moving. Then slowly she raised a hand and pointed to the far wall. I didn't understand at first, but as I followed her gaze, I noticed something strange, a patch of the wall that looked newer than the rest, as if it had been hastily repaired. I couldn't bring myself to move closer, but I didn't need to. The girl's eyes told me everything. Something terrible had happened in that basement, something that had been covered up, hidden away behind the walls, and now she was trapped, unable to move on. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. By morning, I had made up my mind I couldn't stay in that house. Whatever had happened there, whatever was still lurking within its walls, it wasn't something I could live with. I put the house up for sale the very next day. I didn't care about the money I would lose. I just wanted out. Before I left, I did some digging. I needed to know what had happened, why that girl was still there. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. Years ago, a young girl had been murdered in that house by her stepmother. They never found her body, but rumors swirled about the basement, about walls being built where none had been before. I never went back to Willow Street. The house still stands there, as far as I know, waiting for its next victim. But I've made peace with one thing: I will never forget the girl in the white dress, and I pray that one day she will find the peace she deserves. In high school, I would earn some extra money over the summers by house sitting. My aunt and uncle were fairly rich, so they took a lot of vacations. They had gone away on a short weekend trip, so I was house sitting for them the entire weekend. My aunt and uncle owned a couple of cats, so they always requested that I stay overnight, and I didn't mind it anyway, since they had a really nice house. This particular Saturday night, it was my friend Tyler's birthday. Our friend group went out for dinner that evening, and we all wanted to hang out afterwards. I offered up my aunt and uncle's house as a place that we could hang out the rest of the night, since many people wanted to drink and party a bit, and we couldn't do it at anybody else's house due to their parents being home. It was a pretty normal night, and we played many card games and drinking games together and enjoyed celebrating Tyler's birthday. We wrapped up close to 2, and everybody began leaving. There were enough people who stayed sober, so everyone had a ride home, and nobody needed to crash at my aunt and uncle's couch for the night. I said goodbye to everybody, and then headed back into the kitchen to clean up some of the cans and glasses. It felt like it had been barely 3 or 4 minutes since everybody had left that the doorbell rang. I assumed that one of my friends had forgotten something important at the house, so I went to answer the door without thinking much about it. I opened the door and was surprised to see nobody. There I was pretty drunk and didn't think too much of it, thinking my friends were playing a prank on me. Before leaving into the night darkness, I yelled, "Real funny guys, go home." I went back inside and then went to sleep on the couch. Later that night, I was woken up to the sound of the doorbell being repeatedly rang about 4 or 5 times in a row. Very quickly, I didn't know what the time was, but I was pretty angry at being woken up, and I had a feeling that it most likely wasn't my friends ringing the doorbell. I didn't open the door this time, but peeked out the front window through the curtains. My aunt and uncle's house was in a nicer part of town where there was a lot of space for yards and not that many streetlights. I couldn't see anybody through the window because of how dark it was. I didn't call the cops because there was the possibility that it could have been my friends, so I figured I better not call. I went back to sleep and didn't have any more problems for the rest of the night. The next morning, I texted my group chat of my friends and then asked them if they had played a prank on me last night with ringing the doorbell. They all swore that they had not, as they all went home and went to bed after I had cleaned up the rest of the mess from the night before. I opened the front door to leave and saw a piece of paper taped down to the door. The note said, "If you want a really fun night, leave the door unlocked next time." To me, the whole situation seemed more like a weird, messed up prank by someone. But either way, it was creepy. I told my aunt and uncle about the night once they returned and also asked not to stay overnight.